Hello, my name is Niley, and I'm going to be presenting to you the Managing Counseling Relationships PowerPoint presentation for Week 7 assignment. So the first thing we are going to talk about is state laws and ethical codes. Clinical mental health providers provide services within their scope of practice. If they don't, they can be charged with gross incompetence and or professional misconduct as stated by the Office of Professions. Informed consent is also very important in regarding state and ethical codes. Patients must sign informed consent documents before receiving treatment. Full disclosure is needed. Qualifications of supervisors and supervisees that could be assisting in the counseling services. They have a duty to report child abuse, maltreatment, including crimes, in conformance with applicable state and federal laws and regulations. That also comes from the Office of Professions. Consultation with other practitioners also needs to be discussed with clients. Fees and procedures and termination of services are also included within state and ethical code guidelines. We must provide a written statement for procedures, including for billing, payment, including the use of collection agencies when appropriate, requirements for canceling appointments, charges for missed appointments, and access to records. Lastly, on determination of services, counselors must document and submit patients' file for re-engagement in services, referrals to other therapists, counselors, and other services when clients request termination of services. So many things need to be discussed regarding the state and ethical codes when it comes to clinical mental health counselors and counseling patients. Next up, we are going to talk about telemental health documentation. So documentation includes location of telemental health practitioners, the location of the recipient. Both of these are also very important for billing processes, which we will speak about later. Whether or not a recipient is accompanied by a staff member during the telemental health encounter. If the along with the telemental health encounter that includes collaterals such as family members. If the encounter was disrupted due to equipment failure and the plan for follow-up, because many things like this can happen during telemental health sessions, although providers are required to provide these services through an accredited business. If the encounter was disrupted, those are what the guidelines that we would follow. The appropriate modifier must be included to identify the encounter that was performed. So telephone, video, those are the telemental health methods. So safeguarding and the client's privacy. Verifying the client's identity at the beginning of sessions is very important. You can use codes or you can use questions. Verifying the client's identity can be used in these ways. The ACA code H3 states counselors who engage in the use of distance counseling, technology, and or social media to interact with clients take steps to verify the client's identity at the beginning and throughout the therapeutic process. The use of current encryption standards and technology meeting legal standards. Documentation of session is legally required to ensure that counselors are providing the necessary treatments and services. It is also ethically necessary because it documents the progress of clients and the counselor's reasoning behind treatment choices and direction. Counselors must also let clients know the dangers of technology, including hacking and viruses, that can affect their confidentiality, records, or transmissions by using telemental health services. Next, we are going to talk about telemental health and the standards necessary for when we provide these services as professionals. We always must establish professional boundaries by communicating with clients the appropriate time and place to receive services. Counselors must be mindful of how their verbal and nonverbal cues come off when providing these services, which can affect the counseling relationship. Not everything is the same as when we speak with our clients in person and when we are over the computer or over the phone. Our tones may be taken differently. Our verbal cues are very important. Our facial expressions are very important because now we're focusing more on each other's faces when counseling individuals. We must make it clear when providing telemental health services, response times, emergency procedures, and when the counselor won't be available, and the resources that they can look to when they need help and the counselor is not available. Billing, the Office of Mental Health requires recipients or RTs of mental health services to be verified and accepted through Medicaid healthcare plans. Many Medicaid affiliate healthcare plans use telemental health, and these are free services that clients can utilize. We must provide written documentation of agreed fees and payment processes. When using telemental health, excuse me, services, they can be reimbursed through Medicaid only if practitioners and recipients are in the agreed upon time and designated locations. Practitioners have authorized and credentialed licenses, development, periodic review of treatment plans, and entry of process notes must be submitted just like it would be when doing face-to-face counseling. Next, we will talk about counseling diverse populations. With the use of telemental health, we can service many underserved populations, such as the Hispanic community, women and children, and it's very useful also for working with elderly populations. When working with elderly populations, we have to account for the mediums of technology that we use, and we have to use it to individualize care with our clients. They may be able to benefit because they may be able to read our they may be able to I'm sorry. Um, they may be able to also help with elderly patients because they can benefit from these services, let's say if they can't come to the clinic, um, or they can't do it because of a medical condition. I apologize for that. Individuals with hearing impairments may also benefit from telemental health because they're able to zoom in on therapist's face to better read lips, and also they can turn up the volume, which is very helpful. Like with hearing impairments, seeking trained interpreters is also very important because sometimes collaterals cannot always be relied upon. Collaterals such as family members, brothers, sisters, mothers, fathers, aunts, anything like that. So sometimes it's good to use asynchronous telepsychiatry, which is dual video calling with a translator, the client, and the counselor. Individuals with large families can participate, like I mentioned before. Hispanics who are an underserved population usually have a large family, and sometimes it can be helpful with telemental health so that when issues arrive, we can include certain family members or include large groups of family members. We were presented two cases to discuss at the end of our presentations. The first for clinical mental health counselors is the County Mental Health Services Department, where you work, has initiated a distance counseling option to increase access to residents who live in more rural areas of the country that are underserved. You're being asked to run a virtual support group for parents. Your director has suggested that you use a live chat and set times to facilitate this group. Explain the challenges you will need to address to establish and maintain ethical relationships with group members. For this first vignette, counselors will need to be open, honest, and fair, and always establish a sense of professionalism with their clients so that they can keep the group on task at all times. It can especially be difficult when one counselor is not present. They also have to make it clear to individuals within the group session that their personal problems during session should be kept to themselves, um, so not as to influence others to think that it is time for a venting session, where they all come and they just vent, because this is a problem solving where they're each facing a certain dilemma, and we can help them all by problem solving and group thinking. One thing we must make clear as professional counselors is that becoming friends outside of the office is not allowed. Creating dual relationships outside of the office is not allowed. The second vignette read, your client, Dylan, a 15-year-old female Native American heterosexual high school sophomore, is on probation for knowingly receiving stolen goods. Help to resell items friends stole. Dylan has appeared in court numerous times before due to relatable charges. This time, the judge mandated Dylan to attend 8 weeks of mental health counseling. Dylan would like you to communicate with her probation officer to verify that she is making positive changes in her life. What will you do to help Dylan understand before you initiate contact with the probation officer? What information will you be able to share with the probation officer? How will you manage the communications? Counselors need to ask for HIPAA forms to release any sort of information outside of what's allowed. In this case, the court is demanding information from Dylan, who has a probation officer. They will have specific questions of specific information that they would need to know. Dylan is asking the counselor to do something, and he is underage. He is a minor. So the first thing that the counselor should communicate with Dylan is that he would need to get permission from his parents. The counselor would need to receive permission from his parents to release his information, any sort of information, to the probation officer that has not already been requested. The only communication that the probation officer would need to be done with is that it can be sent through mail or can be sent via email, through a law-approved email address. All right, these are the references used within the PowerPoint. Thank you. It's been a pleasure.